Have you ever looked in the mirror and been mesmerised by a spot? You know the type. It's throbs, it's got roots, and you know it's hanging around forever. And I know I have, because when I was planning this video, I was literally experiencing Mount Vesuvius somewhere around here. You can't really see it now because it's flat, dermatological wizardry in the house, but you know, it really upset me. I haven't had one like that for ages, so it got me to thinking, you guys must have had the same experience too, and I don't want you to endure the horror that I've just been through. So I thought I would give you a step-by-step guide to how to solve a spot. Now, when I talked to my team about this idea for a video, it immediately ignited conversation. We all started sharing about our worst spot situation. You know, I thought about it because my skin was really quite unpredictable in my teens into my 20s before I learned the skills that I have now. And for me, certainly, the time that stands out in my memory, I know there's lots of instances. There was a time when I was filming for Dolce & Gabbana and I had a spot, and you know, the pressure of 20-odd chic Italians staring at me, expecting me to be amazing on camera was, you know, not a small thing. But the one that did stand out and actually resonated with one of my team, because she'd had the same experience, was a massive blemish on my chest. Now, why that was so bothersome was because I was in Australia, I was living in Sydney at the time, and everything was quite strappy. And I had a date with probably one of the most handsome men I've ever dated, not to share too much, guys, but I mean, he was genuinely a beautiful being. And of course, this thing sprung up, you know, out of the blue, not an area I'm prone to having blemishes on, but just so big. And in context of otherwise quite normal, healthy skin, it was right in the middle. There was no way I was concealing that thing. It practically had life of its own. And I'll be honest, I cancelled the date. Isn't that shocking and terrible? I couldn't just wear a halter neck or something else. But yeah, I delayed the date. Not going to share the future of the relationship, but needless to say, this, you know, put things on ice. And I'm sure you guys have had the same experience too, whether it's a huge spot that makes you feel like you don't want to go into work, you know, or a date where you're actually thinking about the lighting in the restaurant or which side he's going to sit on because you've got kind of a self-consciousness thing happening. So we've all been there. It makes us all feel human. But let's discuss how to stop these things from happening. So first things first, let's talk about what not to do. What techniques have been passed down over the years that are avidly not the things to do when approaching a spot that's just emerged. So I think the first one that springs to mind is the old toothpaste story. I don't know where that ever came from, but it's definitely something that I still see teens talking about when they come in to see me for the first time. Now, there is a small amount of basis in that some toothpaste contains something called triclosan, which is an antiseptic, but the rest of the formula is so not designed for blemishes. Bear in mind that anything that irritates your skin can escalate a blemish, making it redder, sorer, drier, and less suited for then actually being treated with a proper spot cream. So toothpaste is a big no. Now, there's a theme here for things not to do. The next thing not to do is to physically exfoliate. And I've done a video on this before whereby I was sort of looking at the formula of a supposed, you know, anti-spot face wash / scrub that you were invited to use once or twice daily. Now, I cannot sort of stress this enough. Scrubbing your spots is a disaster. It is the worst kind of irritation that you can inflict on a blemish, and it is not the route to success. So please, anything rougher than fingertips when it comes to cleansing or dealing with your skin right now, please skip it. The next no-go is the group of poorly formulated spot creams. And you'd be surprised how many of supposedly cult products are actually poorly formulated. So let's take Mario Badescu's drying lotion. Now, already that name has my hackles up because we don't want to dry spots out. That is not what we're doing whenever we're tackling inflammation and unclogging pores. So anything that dries your skin out is going to aggravate. Spot lesions are already ceramide deficient. They're prone to dryness and irritation. And if anybody's ever broken out on an airplane, it's because your skin is dry. So that promotes chemogenesis, which makes your skin clog up, and that promotes blemishes. So you do not want irritation. Now, one of the ingredients that really inflames my ire in the drying lotion is camphor, which is an irritant. It gives that sensation of something on your skin and frankly has no business being in a spot treatment. Similarly, look out for products that contain essential oils, things like Sudocrem, for example. Surprisingly, it has sneaky lavender in there. No business being in a soothing cream, in my view. And anything that contains fragrance or drying alcohol, again, irritants you want to skip. And then the final no-no, not surprisingly, is self-intervention. Let's not squeeze our spots, let's not pick them, let's not accidentally rub them off and break the head. This tends to promote hyperpigmentation, and in the worst scenarios can actually promote scarring, where you are driving inflammation deeper. And we all know the kind of spot that we just mustn't touch, the deep ones. So if you kind of fiddle around with those, there's certainly nothing to release, and you run the risk of driving inflammation deeper into the dermis, and that promotes scarring. So please, 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 no self-extraction, no self-squeezing, no self-tweezering, whatever the tools are, just step away. So when I started putting this idea of this video together, I did want to see what you guys were experiencing, and we had a deluge of responses on Instagram about their own experiences and when a spot had interfered with their life, and flagged a few really important points. So somebody, Elise Carney, hi Elise, said that she had a spot that literally popped itself when I was out with friends. I didn't notice until someone told me. I mean, that is kind of the worst fear, isn't it? You're eating something and one of those spots that typically would have a white head is under a bit of pressure with the chewing, particularly if you're having a steak or something, and it just, self-combusts and explodes right there. I feel your pain. Then we have Layla Michelle Smith. Now, I do really relate to this because this sounds like my experience this week. Yeah, defo, an independent being with emotions rather than just a spot so angry, named him Frank. I love that. Mine definitely warranted a name, but something more sort of Machiavellian, I think, like Lucifer. And then Liv raises a really good point. My acne is making me depressed. Please help. Will it ever go away? And, there's a lot of drama and emotion around like one really big spot coming up, particularly if it's at an important time. You have an interview, a date, a wedding. I've definitely had patients, sort of phone in an emergency situation. I've got 5 days to go and I have a boulder here. Can we do something? And it is one of the rare times where I inject blemishes. I'm not a huge fan of injections because I've seen too many people end up with indented marks. But it is an approach. My guideline is if it's bigger than a centimetre, it's stubborn and lumpy, and you just know it's going to sit there for a while, then it's a good time to think about doing it because it does reduce the risk of scarring. But bear in mind, there is a risk of an indentation as a bit of atrophy can happen. But yeah, we've all been there. So what do we actually do when we get a new spot? I would recommend, in the first instance, getting in there early. We all know the sign, right? That first sign of an incipient spot is like a little red mound appearing, and so often it's down here in what I call the triangle of doom. It's typically premenstrual. It can happen anytime, but it is so common, particularly with us girls. Just before our periods is the time when these things come calling. So get in there early is the first step. Secondly, anything you're going to do to treat it should be done with clean skin. So a gentle, non-drying, non-foaming, non-clogging cleanser, super important, so that you're working with clean skin. Next thing, if it's really sore and uncomfortable, you can ice spots. I've seen a lot of this on TikTok recently, and icing works in the same way as it does for a swollen ankle, right? It reduces blood flow and to some degree inflammation to the area. So if it's really sore, and jaws along the jawline can often be really uncomfortable. You become aware of them because when you talk and you eat, the skin is being stretched. So icing it is okay. What I definitely caution is not putting ice that's on, straight onto your skin. You want to wrap it in a thin washcloth. So you're taking a bit of the edge off the temperature. Don't expose your skin to that degree of extreme cold. Do it for a couple of minutes, and it can help, and it soothes the sensation as well. But there is no substitute to using a proper anti-blemish solution. So the ingredients I want you to look for, number one, my top spot booster is benzoyl peroxide. So with benzoyl peroxide, look for strength 2.5 to 5% strength. You don't need to go any higher, just higher will give you no more benefits and more irritation potentially. And look for benzoyl peroxide in quite a soothing base. Do check out the vehicle and look for occlusive ingredients that are going to help soothe the areas of skin just around your blemish that's not overly drying. Alternatives are salicylic acid, 1 to 2%. I also like niacinamide and azelaic acid in sensitive skin. So niacinamide, 5 to 10%, azelaic acid, anything from 5 to 20%, depending on whether you're using over-the-counter or prescription strength products. Finally, bakuchiol is worth a mention. There is some suggestion it has a similar effect to salicylic acid in its anti-inflammatory potential, and it's well tolerated again. So it's another ingredient I like to think of when we're talking about acne treatments for sensitive skin. And those three ingredients together, azelaic, niacinamide, and bakuchiol, are all in brightly serum, which is why I'm such a fan of it for blemish-prone skin. So the next step may seem counterintuitive, but it is so important to hydrate your skin when you're treating it for a blemish. There are a number of reasons for this. Firstly, as I said before, we're not drying spots out. That is a misconception. That's not what we're trying to do here. Hydrating the skin is good because it reduces the tendency for dry skin to develop, which means that your concealer is going to go on much more smoothly. So that's the first thing. It's better for cosmetics. And secondly, it just encourages the area to heal. As I mentioned before at the beginning, acne lesions are ceramide deficient. So you actually want to replace ceramides to encourage a better barrier. So look for sort of moisturizers that contain ceramides, or indeed niacinamide, as I mentioned before, which boosts the skin's own production of ceramides. And then just to mention it again, if your spot is really big, solid, and cystic, painful, uncomfortable, or you have a big event coming up, then you can certainly see a dermatologist for an injection of intralesional steroids. I definitely think there is a time and a place for this, but it's the right spot. I mean, I've seen patients come in requesting steroid injections for all their spots, and they're all, less than probably half a centimeter, but they've just gotten used to being treated with injections because it's a quick fix. There's no substitute to putting a proper preventative skincare regime in place. So only use injections as a treatment for something that really is a dire emergency. And the last step is to conceal and forget. Remember, your spot is nowhere near as big to anyone else. Your spot is bigger to you because you have honed in with laser-like focus onto this abnormality because it upsets you and it bothers you, and it's a harbinger of the trouble that you've had in the past with your skin. So whilst it completely dominates your view, for everyone else it's maybe there's something there, maybe they don't even notice it at all, particularly if you do a good job with concealing. So get yourself a good quality non-comedogenic concealer. I like NARS. Dermablend is good if you've got a really problematic spot. Those are the two that I go to for something that really needs industrial coverage. High pigments, low amount of product is then needed to cover it up, so you don't have lots of product coating the area, which again can tend to draw attention to it. And both of those stay put really well. You won't even need powder, so please don't powder blemishes. And there you go. So guys, a lighthearted but hopefully helpful video today on helping you tackle a spot. The key take-home message is use a correctly formulated anti-blemish treatment. Don't squeeze, and keep it in perspective.